Welcome to Globewise Entertainment, your gateway to the forgotten, the underrated, and the legendary stories of cinema. Today, we're diving into 15 sci-fi box office bombs from the 1970s that turned out to be truly great. These are the films that stumbled in theaters but stood the test of time with visionary ideas, bold storytelling, and unforgettable worlds. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, make sure to hit that button now for more untold Hollywood stories and deep dives into classic cinema. And don't forget, tell us in the comments which of these underrated sci-fi gems from the 70s is your favorite. 1. The Black Hole, 1979. When Disney released The Black Hole in 1979, it was supposed to be their grand answer to the Star Wars craze. With groundbreaking visuals, a haunting score by John Barry, and one of the earliest uses of computer-controlled camera technology, it looked like Disney was stepping boldly into the future of sci-fi. But here's the twist: audiences weren't ready for it. Instead of the light-hearted space adventure people expected, The Black Hole delivered something darker, almost gothic. The story follows a space crew who discover a massive ship hovering on the edge of a black hole, led by a mysterious scientist with sinister plans. The film explored themes of obsession, morality, and the terrifying unknown of space itself. Critics were divided. Some praised its visuals and ambitious storytelling, while others found it too grim and slow-paced compared to the action-packed blockbusters of the late 70s. At the box office, it couldn't compete with the likes of Star Wars or Star Trek, the motion picture. Disney expected a mega hit, but instead, The Black Hole fell short, branded a box office disappointment. Yet over time, the film found a second life. Sci-fi fans began to appreciate its eerie atmosphere, philosophical undertones, and stunning design work, especially the chilling finale, where the black hole becomes both literal and symbolic. Today, many consider The Black Hole not just a cult classic, but one of the most daring science fiction films Disney ever attempted. It may have bombed in 1979, but The Black Hole proved that sometimes the biggest failures leave the deepest impact. 2. Soylent Green, 1973. When Soylent Green hit theaters in 1973, it promised something chillingly different: a dystopian vision of Earth in the year 2022, overpopulated, polluted, and starving. Directed by Richard Fleischer and starring Charlton Heston, the film explored a future where the world's resources were depleted and society relied on mysterious food rations known only as Soylent Green. At first, audiences didn't quite know what to make of it. The movie struggled at the box office, pulling in modest returns compared to its budget and falling short of expectations. Critics at the time were divided. Some dismissed it as too grim, too slow, or simply too strange for mainstream tastes. In a decade defined by spectacle and optimism in cinema, Soylent Green felt almost too bleak to sell. But here's the twist: while it may have bombed financially, its impact on science fiction history is undeniable. That shocking final reveal, "Soylent Green is people," became one of the most iconic twists in film history. What was once seen as a box office failure is now considered a hauntingly prophetic masterpiece that warned us about climate change, corporate greed, and the dangers of overconsumption decades before these issues dominated global headlines. Charlton Heston's performance, alongside Edward G. Robinson in his final role, gave the movie emotional weight that outlived its initial reception. Over the years, Soylent Green found new life on television reruns and home video, slowly gaining cult status. Today, it's remembered not as a flop, but as a visionary film that was simply too far ahead of its time. So while it bombed in the 1970s, Soylent Green has gone on to become one of the most important sci-fi warnings ever put on screen, proof that some box office bombs can still change the future of cinema. 3. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. Coming in at number 3 on our list is one of the strangest, darkest, and most underrated sci-fi films of the 1970s, A Boy and His Dog. Released in 1975 and based on the cult novella by Harlan Ellison, this post-apocalyptic gem tells the story of Vic, a teenage drifter, and his telepathic dog, Blood, as they wander a desolate wasteland ravaged by nuclear war. Humanity has collapsed into chaos, and survival is brutal, but it's the bond between this boy and his dog that gives the film its heart. At the time, audiences weren't ready for its mix of bleak black comedy, gritty violence, and satirical social commentary. The movie shocked critics and confused moviegoers, making it a box office disappointment. But beneath its rough edges, A Boy and His Dog was way ahead of its time. It dared to question morality in a world stripped of rules, and its biting satire explored themes of survival, companionship, and the cost of human desperation. The ending, still one of the most talked about in sci-fi history, left audiences stunned and divided. Although overlooked during its release, the movie slowly built a cult following, inspiring generations of filmmakers. In fact, George Miller has openly admitted that A Boy and His Dog was a huge influence on his Mad Max series. Today, it's recognized as a bold and innovative piece of 1970s science fiction, proving that sometimes, the films that flop at the box office are the ones that age the best. 4. Silent Running, 1972. Coming in at number 4 we have Silent Running, a film that was way ahead of its time. Released in 1972, this eco-conscious sci-fi drama imagined a bleak future where Earth's natural forests no longer exist. To preserve what's left of nature, massive greenhouse domes float through space, carrying the last surviving trees, plants, and wildlife. The story follows Freeman Lowell, played brilliantly by Bruce Dern, a lonely botanist who takes it upon himself to protect these domes when corporate orders demand their destruction. With only 3 service robots, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, for company, Lowell makes a desperate, emotional stand for the survival of Earth's last greenery. At the box office, Silent Running struggled to find its audience. Mainstream moviegoers at the time were looking for flashy action or space battles, and Universal's marketing couldn't quite sell this thoughtful, slow-burning story. But despite being a financial disappointment, the film became a cult classic for its moving environmental message, stunning miniature effects, and haunting folk soundtrack by Joan Baez. Decades later, Silent Running feels more relevant than ever, especially in an age where conversations about climate change and protecting our planet dominate headlines. It may not have been a hit in the 70s, but today it stands as one of the most heartfelt and meaningful science fiction films of its era. 5. THX 1138, 1971. At number 5, we have a film that dared to look into the darkest corners of the future, THX 1138. Released in 1971, this was the ambitious debut of a then-unknown filmmaker, George Lucas. Yes, the same man who would later create Star Wars started his career with this haunting vision of a sterile, controlled society where love, freedom, and individuality were outlawed. In this bleak world, people are stripped of names and given codes instead, like THX 1138, played by Robert Duvall. Every aspect of life is monitored, emotions are suppressed through mandatory drugs, and even human interaction is tightly regulated. But when THX dares to feel something real, when he falls in love, he begins to rebel against a system designed to erase humanity itself. Critics praised the film's artistry, its groundbreaking use of sound design, and its chillingly prophetic vision of a world where technology replaces humanity. Yet despite its innovation, THX 1138 was a box office failure. The film's slow pacing and minimalist storytelling didn't connect with audiences of the early 70s, who were still used to more traditional Hollywood sci-fi like Planet of the Apes. Warner Brothers quickly pulled support, leaving the movie lost in obscurity. But over time, THX 1138 has been reevaluated as a cult masterpiece. Today, it's celebrated for its bold cinematography, experimental editing, and themes that feel eerily relevant in our digital, surveillance-driven age. More importantly, it laid the foundation for George Lucas's future. Without THX 1138, there may never have been a Star Wars. So while it bombed at the box office, this film is now seen as one of the most daring sci-fi debuts of all time, a bold statement that true greatness isn't always recognized right away. 6. Zardoz, 1974. Coming in at number 6 is John Berman's cult classic Zardoz, a film that proved sometimes audiences just aren't ready for brilliance. Released in 1974, this bizarre, surreal sci-fi epic starred Sean Connery, fresh off his James Bond fame, in one of the most daring roles of his career. The story takes us into a distant, dystopian future where humanity is divided into two extremes: the Eternals, an immortal elite living in luxury, and the Brutals, a savage group struggling in a ruined wasteland. Enter Zed, played by Connery, a brutal who dares to challenge the corrupt system after discovering that the godlike figure he worships, Zardoz, is nothing more than a manufactured lie. At its core, Zardoz isn't just about guns, immortality, or giant floating stone heads. It's about power, class, control, and the search for meaning in a broken world. But despite its daring ideas and stunning visuals, the movie bombed at the box office. Critics mocked it, and audiences were baffled, especially by Connery's infamous red costume, which became an instant punchline. Yet, over time, Zardoz transformed into a cult masterpiece. Film scholars now praise its bold themes, psychedelic visuals, and fearless performances. What was once seen as a confusing mess is now celebrated as one of the most unique and thought-provoking sci-fi films of the 1970s. Sometimes, the future of cinema takes time to be understood, and Zardoz is living proof. 7. Quintet, 1979. When Robert Altman, one of Hollywood's most daring directors, turned his eyes to science fiction, audiences weren't ready for what they saw. Quintet, 1979, wasn't your typical action-packed, effects-heavy sci-fi film of the 1970s. Instead, it was a bleak, haunting vision of humanity's final days on frozen Earth. The story takes us into a world where the sun has grown weak, the planet is locked in endless ice, and society has collapsed into survivalist tribes. Paul Newman stars as Essex, a traveler who stumbled into a crumbling city where the only thing left to live for is a deadly board game called Quintet. This isn't just a pastime. It's a ritual where real human lives are wagered and lost, turning entertainment into extermination. The movie unfolds like a surreal dream, quiet, slow, and suffocating with despair. Altman shot the film in Montreal's abandoned Expo 67 site, using natural snow and ice, giving the set a chilling realism. It was less about flashy battle and more about atmosphere, silence, and the grim question: what do people cling to when hope's gone? Why it bombed? When it premiered, audiences were expecting a traditional sci-fi adventure, something in the vein of Star Wars or Logan's Run. Instead, they got a cerebral, almost philosophical meditation on the end of civilization. Critics called it confusing and unwatchable, and the movie quickly disappeared from theaters. Its slow pace and heavy symbolism were simply too much for mainstream audiences at the time. Why it's great today? Looking back, Quintet stands out as one of the most unique experiments in 70s science fiction. Its atmosphere is unlike any other film, its icy landscapes still breathtaking, and Newman's stoic performance haunting. For fans of dystopian cinema, it feels less like a movie and more like a frozen time capsule of existential dread. Today, cinephiles appreciate Quintet as a bold, uncompromising vision, proof that not all great sci-fi comes with lasers and explosions. Sometimes, the cold silence of extinction says more than 1,000 special effects ever could. 8. Phase 4, 1974. In 1974, moviegoers were introduced to a science fiction film unlike anything they had ever seen before, Phase 4. Directed by Saul Bass, the legendary graphic designer behind some of Hollywood's most iconic title sequences, This film wasn't just science fiction, it was cinematic art. The story begins after a mysterious cosmic event alters the behavior of ants in the Arizona desert. Suddenly, these tiny creatures develop a hive intelligence far beyond anything humans can comprehend. A team of scientists is dispatched to study the phenomenon, only to find themselves trapped in a psychological and physical battle against an evolving species that might just replace humanity as the dominant life form on Earth. But here's the twist. Unlike typical creature features of the 1970s, Phase 4 wasn't about killer ants in the traditional sense. Instead, it explored big themes of evolution, intelligence, and mankind's fragile place in the universe. Phase used surreal imagery, haunting cinematography, and microscopic close-ups of ants that felt as terrifying as any Hollywood monster. Unfortunately, mainstream audiences at the time didn't know what to make of it. They expected a pulpy B-movie, but instead got a slow-burn, cerebral sci-fi thriller. The film bombed at the box office, disappearing almost as quickly as it arrived. Yet today, Phase 4 is celebrated as a cult masterpiece. Critics praise its bold storytelling, striking visuals, and eerie, thought-provoking tone. In fact, the film's original ending, a surreal sequence showing humanity's transformation under the ants' new order, was considered too strange for audiences and was cut from theatrical release. Decades later, it resurfaced and shocked fans with its artistic brilliance. Phase 4 may not have conquered the box office, but it proved that even the smallest creatures can tell the biggest stories about life, survival, and evolution. 9. Capricorn One, 1978. Back in the late 1970s, space was still the big obsession in Hollywood. Just a year after Star Wars conquered the box office, studios rushed to bring more sci-fi spectacles to the big screen. But instead of aliens and laser battles, Capricorn One took audiences in a far more grounded and terrifying direction. Directed by Peter Hyams, this conspiracy thriller tells the story of NASA's first manned mission to Mars. But when the agency realizes the mission is doomed to fail, they secretly fake the entire landing in a desert soundstage. The astronauts, played by James Brolin, Sam Waterston, and O.J. Simpson, are forced to play along or risk their lives. But when they try to escape and reveal the truth, they find themselves hunted by the very government that once called them heroes. On paper, the movie had all the right ingredients: big stars, a topical Cold War paranoia theme, and a chilling premise that played on real-world doubts about space exploration and the moon landing. But despite strong reviews and audience curiosity, the film didn't perform as expected at the box office. Critics argued that its slow-burn pacing couldn't compete with the high-octane sci-fi blockbusters of the era, and audiences who wanted more explosions and special effects were instead served political intrigue and government cover-ups. Over time, though, Capricorn One has been re-evaluated as one of the smartest and most suspenseful sci-fi thrillers of the 1970s. Its influence can be seen in later films like The Truman Show and Interstellar, as well as in countless conspiracy theories that still capture imaginations today. What once flopped in theaters has since become a cult classic, proving that sometimes the quietest sci-fi stories end up leaving the loudest impact. 10. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. At number 10, we have The Man Who Fell to Earth, a 1976 sci-fi drama that was light years ahead of its time, yet tragically misunderstood when it first hit theaters. Directed by visionary filmmaker Nicholas Regg and starring the legendary David Bowie in his first major film role, the movie tells the haunting story of Thomas Jerome Newton, an alien who crash lands on Earth while searching for water to save his dying planet. Newton uses his advanced knowledge to build a massive tech empire, hoping to finance a return trip home. But instead of finding salvation, he gets consumed by the darker sides of human nature: wealth, corruption, greed, and addiction. Audiences in the 1970s didn't know what to make of it. This wasn't a typical space adventure with laser battles and spaceships. It was a slow, surreal, and philosophical exploration of loneliness, human weakness, and the price of ambition. Critics at the time called it confusing, strange, even alienating. At the box office, it failed to draw the crowds, especially compared to blockbuster juggernauts like Star Wars. But today, The Man Who Fell to Earth is considered a cult masterpiece. David Bowie's performance is mesmerizing, his otherworldly presence perfectly embodying a man out of place on Earth. Nicholas Regg's fragmented, dreamlike editing style challenged traditional storytelling, making the film feel like a puzzle you're never quite finished solving. In hindsight, its themes of corporate power, technological obsession, and human self-destruction feel eerily prophetic. What once was seen as a flop is now praised as one of the most important sci-fi films of the decade, a movie that dared to be different, and in doing so, secured a legacy that grows stronger with time. So while it bombed at the box office in the 70s, today, The Man Who Fell to Earth stands tall as a reminder that some of the greatest works of science fiction aren't about outer space battles. They're about the struggles within ourselves. 11. Westworld, 1973. When audiences first saw Westworld in 1973, they didn't realize they were watching the birth of a sci-fi idea that would inspire decades of storytelling. Written and directed by Michael Crichton, yes, the same mind behind Jurassic Park, Westworld transported viewers to Delos, a futuristic amusement park where lifelike robots catered to every human desire. Guests could live out their fantasies in the Wild West, until, of course, the machines started to malfunction. At the center of the chaos was Yul Brynner, chilling as the relentless gunslinger android. His performance was part cowboy, part Terminator, years before the Terminator was even conceived. And here's the kicker. Westworld was the first film to ever use digital image processing, pioneering effects that later became standard in Hollywood. But despite its groundbreaking tech and thrilling concept, Westworld didn't shoot straight at the box office. Critics were mixed, calling it too cold and clinical, while mainstream audiences weren't quite ready for the theme park gone wrong premise. It barely made back its budget, and for decades, it was remembered more as a curiosity than a hit. Yet time has proven Westworld's brilliance. It inspired a cult following, a 1976 sequel, and even the acclaimed HBO series that brought the story into the modern era. Today, what once looked like a mechanical misfire is celebrated as a visionary sci-fi classic that was simply ahead of its time. 12. Damnation Alley, 1977. When audiences first got a taste of Damnation Alley, they were promised a post-apocalyptic thrill ride, a battle for survival in a shattered, radioactive world. Released in 1977, the same year as Star Wars, this film never stood a chance at the box office. Overshadowed by George Lucas' juggernaut, critics dismissed it as a messy, B-level production with dated effects. But here's the truth, Damnation Alley had ambition. Based loosely on Roger Zelazny's novel, it told the story of survivors navigating a devastated Earth in one of the coolest vehicles ever put on screen, the Landmaster, a massive armored truck that could climb rocks, swim through rivers, and crush obstacles in its path. The film's vision of giant mutant scorpions, flesh-eating cockroaches, and strange, storm-torn landscapes gave it a wild, pulpy charm that hardcore sci-fi fans still admire today. Yes, it was a commercial flop, but it's a movie that dared to blend military grit with outlandish sci-fi imagination. Over time, Damnation Alley has become a cult classic, remembered less for its flaws and more for its bold attempt to show us a world gone mad, and the survival of humanity through sheer willpower and ingenuity. In short, what the critics of 1977 called a disaster, modern audiences see as a unique gem of 70s sci-fi cinema. 13. Logan's Run. We land on one of the most ambitious sci-fi films of the 1970s, Logan's Run, 1976. Set in a dazzling, futuristic domed city, the movie explores a society where pleasure and perfection reign, but only until the age of 30. After that, citizens must undergo a ritual called carousel, a chilling ceremony of renewal that is really just state-sanctioned execution. Our protagonist, Logan 5, played by Michael York, is a Sandman, a law enforcer tasked with hunting down runners, those who try to escape their fate. But when Logan himself begins to question the system and runs for his own life, the film transforms into a gripping exploration of freedom, mortality, and rebellion against control. On release, Logan's run was seen as over-the-top and didn't live up to box office expectations, especially once Star Wars hit theaters just a year later and redefined the genre. Critics pointed to its campy special effects and dated futurism, making it feel overshadowed in the space race of sci-fi cinema. But today, it's a cult classic. Its daring themes, questioning authority, the pursuit of individuality, and the dangers of a pleasure-obsessed society, feel surprisingly modern. The movie even won an Academy Award for its visual effects and inspired decades of dystopian storytelling, from The Hunger Games * to The Island. Logan's run may not have been a financial powerhouse in the 70s, but it remains one of the great sci-fi gems of the decade, a box office bomb that proved visionary in the long run. 14. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. At number 14, we have The Andromeda Strain, a cerebral sci-fi thriller that was light years ahead of its time. Released in 1971 and based on Michael Crichton's best-selling novel, the film told the chilling story of a deadly extraterrestrial microorganism brought back to Earth on a satellite. Scientists scramble inside an underground high-tech lab to contain it before humanity faces total annihilation. While the premise was gripping, audiences back then weren't quite ready for its slow-burn pacing and ultra-scientific detail. The film underperformed at the box office, overshadowed by more action-packed hits of the era. But here's the twist. The Andromeda Strain has since been recognized as a visionary classic. Its meticulous attention to scientific accuracy, groundbreaking special effects, and sterile set design inspired later films like Outbreak, Contagion, and even influenced how Hollywood depicted pandemic scenarios. Critics now praise it as one of the most intelligent sci-fi films of the 1970s, proof that not every success is measured in ticket sales. What once looked like a failure is now seen as a masterclass in tension, realism, and futurism. 15. Rollerball, 1975. In the mid-1970s, sci-fi was beginning to dominate theaters, but not every ambitious film found instant success. One of the most fascinating examples is Rollerball, 1975. Directed by Norman Jewison and starring James Caan. At first glance, Rollerball looked like a futuristic sports thriller set in a dystopian world where corporations control every aspect of society, even entertainment. The story follows Jonathan, the greatest player in a brutal, high-speed game that blends football, hockey, and roller derby into one violent spectacle. But the film was much more than just futuristic action. It was a sharp critique of consumerism, corporate power, and the loss of individuality. Audiences expecting non-stop sci-fi action were caught off guard by the film's slower, cerebral tone. Critics were divided, and while it earned back its budget, it wasn't the box office smash MGM had hoped for. Over time, however, Rollerball gained cult classic status. Viewers began to see it not just as a sports film, but as a chilling prediction of a future where entertainment is weaponized to control the masses. Today, Rollerball is remembered as one of the boldest and most thought-provoking sci-fi films of the 1970s. Its chilling vision still feels relevant in a world where corporations dominate entertainment and technology. What was once dismissed as a box office disappointment is now recognized as a brilliant piece of dystopian cinema. And that wraps up our journey through 15 sci-fi box office bombs from the 1970s that were actually great. These films may have failed at the box office, but they left behind timeless visions that still inspire filmmakers today. If you enjoyed this countdown, don't forget to subscribe to Globewise Entertainment for more hidden Hollywood stories, retro movie deep dives, and cinematic treasures from every era. Which one of these 70s sci-fi gems is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, Keep exploring the world of cinema with us here at Globewise Entertainment.